Hi, good afternoon. These are notes on area. This is on page 52 of our notebook. So area is the amount of space inside of a closed figure, and you're going to have to memorize these formulas. Some of them they're pretty closely related to others, so if you can kind of see that connection, it won't make it as much. The yellow highlighter is just because my highlighter kind of bled through from my other side, which I do have the answers to the inside, so I'll show those to you at the end of the video. So let's start with a square. So square, all the sides are the same. Area of any rectangular shape is length times width, but because these are the same, I said s squared. Both of these formulas work. So here you just do 6 times 6, so you get 36 yards squared. Then this middle one, just 9.7 times 9.7. And then when you do that in the calculator, 94.09 centimeters squared. I don't see, it says round to the nearest tenth when necessary, so obviously we should have rounded that up to 94.1, but since I already wrote it, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it. So 9.75 times 9.75, or in your calculator you can also do 9.75 squared, and you'll get the same result. So we get 95, I'll go ahead and do the tenths this time, 95.1 meters squared. Okay, so that's squares. So you just take the length times width. Okay, same thing for rectangles. So rectangles, same idea as the square, it's just your two lengths are going to be different. So we're just going to multiply 8.5 times 9.1, and you get 77.35. So I'm going to round that to 77.4. And then here, you've got your length, you've got your width, so 42.5 times 37.2, and I get 1,581 inches squared. Oh, let me put that back over here. So when you're doing area, because it's covering a closed figure, it's 2 dimensions, so that's why we're raising it to the second power, because it's 2 dimensions. And then here you've got a length and a width, so you can just multiply those. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy. When we start getting into the more complicated shapes, there'll be a little bit more thought process to this. So 109.35, so 109.4. And it doesn't give us any units, so we're just going to say units squared. Okay. Now moving on to a parallelogram. So parallelograms, rectangles are parallelogram. They're just a special parallelogram because all 4 of the vertices have a right angle, and then squares are a special rectangle because all the sides are the same. So a parallelogram actually is connected to a rectangle, which is then connected to a square. So here it's still length times width, but we're going to call it base times height. Just know that your base and height have to be perpendicular to each other. So the 2 numbers I'm going to use in this shape are going to be 5 and 6 because they are perpendicular to each other. And then with a parallelogram, your opposite sides are the same length. So we can actually, if you want to write 5 down here, you could. So you could see that the 6 and the 5 are actually, they have a right angle to each other. They're perpendicular. So therefore we're going to use those numbers. We are not going to use the 9. So 6 times 5 just gives me 30. And then feet squared because it is area. All right, base times height says just 17 times 14. So 238 yards squared. And then we've got this shape here. There are 3 numbers, but you're only going to use 2. Remember, base and height have to be perpendicular to each other. So we're going to use the 13 and the 6. So these 2 are the numbers I'm using. So 13 times 6. So 78. So that's parallelogram, okay? Then we've got triangle. Triangle is base times height divided by 2. So it's taking a parallelogram, but then just cutting it in half. And again, your height must be perpendicular to the base. So the 2 numbers we're going to use here, my number kind of got cut off. I don't know what that's supposed to be. I'm going to go with 6. I don't know what yours is, but I'm just going to, I can't tell what this says, so I think it says 6. So 7 times 6 is 42, and half of 42 is 21. If I'm wrong, just tell me in the comments, or just tell me in class tomorrow, okay? All right, here, so your base and height, so 36 times 7, and then you have to divide it by 2, because a triangle is half of a parallelogram. So 36 times 7 divided by 2. 126 millimeters squared. And then here you've got 3 numbers. This is your base and height. This is actually called a hypotenuse. It's the longest side of a right triangle. It's opposite the right angle because your right angle is the biggest in a right triangle. So your longest side is always opposite your biggest angle. So here we're going to do 5 times 7 because they are perpendicular to each other, which gives me 35, and then half of 35 is 17.5. And they don't give me any units, so I'm just going to say units squared. Okay. Trapezoid, probably the most complicated out of the two-dimensional shapes that we've used so far. And really, it's kind of like a triangle. You know, just you don't have the pointy piece down here. So what you do is you take the base 1 plus the base 2, and your bases are your 2 sides of your trapezoid that are parallel to each other. And then you multiply by the height, just like we do here with the triangle, and then you divide by 2. So really the only difference is you don't have 1 base, you have 2 bases. Okay? So we're going to do 15 plus 23. And we get 38, and then we're going to multiply 38 times 2. You get 76. So 15 plus 23 times 6, I don't know, and then divide that by 2. So 15 plus 23 times 6 divided by 2. So 114. So the 7 right here, that's kind of like a decoy. You didn't need to use it. And the reason why I use the 6 is because it is perpendicular to the bases. Okay? All right, so you've got base 1, base 2, and then you've got your height. So you're just going to add your base 1 and base 2. Multiply by your height. And divide by 2. So again, very, very similar to the triangle. Sorry about writing that wrong. So 36 plus 27 times 7 divided by 2. I get 220.5 millimeters squared. All right. And then this last one is a composite shape. A composite shape is 2 shapes or more. So 2 or more shapes that are put together. So what we can do is we can find the area of one and then find the area of the other. Okay. So it looks like this is 35 and this is 38. Okay. So 35 times 38. So 35 times 38 is, so this piece right here is 1,330. Now this triangle, they don't necessarily give us the dimensions exactly, but they do give us a way to solve it. So this whole thing's 47, and this piece right here is 35. So I can subtract this 35, because that's this piece right here, to get this remainder here. So that is going to give me 12. And then this is parallel to here, so I know that this is also 38. And these are obviously not drawn to scale. Okay? So then 28 times 12, and then divide that by 2. So 28 times 12, and then divide by 2. 168. Oh, wait a minute. This is a trapezoid, though. Hold on. Oh, I didn't even think about that. This is a trapezoid. It's just one of the sides is a 90-degree angle. Okay, well, I wonder if we'll get the same answer then. So let's do base 1 plus base 2, multiply by the height, and then divide it by 2. And we'll see if we get the same answer as if we had broken it up into 2 pictures. So 35 plus 47, so 35 plus 47 times 38, and then divide by 2. 1,558, okay, so 1,558. And let's add these two together, so 1,330 plus 168. Uh-oh, I'm off somehow. I don't know. Sorry. Okay. Someone asked me, let's table this one and let's come back to it tomorrow in class. Okay? Because I obviously am not understanding why it's not giving me the same answer. Okay? All right. So here's the answers to the inside, because I said that I was going to give you guys answers so that you could just go ahead and check it at home. So you might want to pause the video so you can see them. I highlighted the numbers I used so you could see why I was getting which answers I got. Okay. Again, you could just pause the video so you can see. Okay. And then over here, we have got circles and circumference and area. So the radius, a radius is the distance from the center of a circle to the edge. So if you were to draw a circle and you were to put a point right there in the center, to go from the center to the edge, that is your radius. Okay. Diameter is just double your radius. So it's your radius going one way and your radius going the other, and it's called diameter. A diameter is just a special chord that goes from one side of the circle to another, and it has to go through the center. Okay. So circumference uses diameter and radius. Circumference is a comparison of the radius to the, it's how many radii it takes to go around the circle. Or how many diameters it takes to go around a circle. So diameter times pi is one way to find circumference, and 2r times pi is another way to find circumference. The reason why we can simultaneously use these is because 2 radii is equivalent to 1 diameter. So circumference is pretty much just the perimeter of a circle. And then you've got area. Area is just pi times radius squared, and all area is the amount of space inside the circle. So amount of space in circle. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the area and the circumference of the following figures. We're going to show all the work. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth. We're going to use 3.14 for pi. Another number you can use, you don't see it often, that you can use for pi is you can actually also use, if you wanted, a fraction of 22 over 7. Okay, so we're going to use 3.14, but just in case you ever want to know, you could also use the fraction 22 over 7 to represent an estimated amount for pi. So area, again, is pi times radius squared. And that's just something you're going to have to memorize. And then circumference is, we've got the 2, so we've got diameter times pi, or 2 radii times pi. Okay? It is, some kids do get these two confused because there's r squared and then there's 2r. Please just make sure you can distinguish between the two, okay? So pi times radius squared, so this really means 3.14 times 7 squared, and then you just type in your calculator. So 7 squared times 3.14, and they said to go to the hundredths, which is already at the hundredths. So 153.86 centimeters squared. Okay. Circumference is diameter times pi, or 2 radii times pi. So we're going to double our radius and make it 14, because I'm going to use this one. So 2 times 7 times pi. So 14 times 3.14 gives me 43.96 centimeters. Now circumference is like perimeter, so it's one direction. So you do not put a squared because it's not the amount of space in the circle. It's just going around the circle. Okay. Moving on. All right. So here we've got 16 centimeters going all the way across, so that's our diameter, right? So this was radius, this is diameter. So we are going to have to cut this in half because for our radius equation, we need, not our radius equation, our area equation, we need to use r, or use radius. So our radius for this problem is going to be 8. So we're going to use 8 for area. So that's 3.14, so pi times radius squared, and 3.14 times 8 squared gives me 296 hundredths centimeters squared. For circumference, we can just use the diameter given, so it's just diameter times pi, so 16 times pi, which is just 16 times 3.14, which is 50.25. I will tell you there's sometimes in EOG questions where they say leave in terms of pi. If they ever say leave in terms of pi, this is what they mean. They mean just leave it with the pi. Don't actually multiply it. So both of these answers actually work. This is using the 3.14, and this is just leaving it with the pi value and not multiplying by it. So both of those actually are the same value. All right, so number 3, this is given our radius. So this is our radius. So we're going to use that in our area formula. So pi, so 3.14 times 5 squared, and that gives me 78.5 yards squared. If they had said leave in terms of pi, you could just say 25 pi. Okay, both of these are pretty much the same. The only reason why I can't say they're exactly the same is because pi is not 3.14. Pi is 3.14159, blah, 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 blah. It's an irrational number. It goes on for forever. So they are slightly different, but they give you the same, they basically give you the same value. Here we need circumference, so we need to do double the radius, so make that 10. So 2 times 5 times pi. So 10 times 3.14, which gives me 31.4 yards. Okay. And then our last one, we do need to go ahead and cut that in half to make us our radius, because that's our diameter. So our radius is going to be, let's see, I think it's like 3.75, but I just want to make sure. Yep, okay. So 3.75 is what we're going to use for our radius. So pi times 3.75 squared. So 3.14 times 3.75 squared gives me, we're going to go to the hundredths place, so 44.16 meters squared. If you want to leave it in terms of pi, that's fine. It didn't ask us to, but if you want to practice doing it that way, you can. And then just pi times d, so 7.5 times 3.14 gives me 23.55. Okay, so what we've practiced, just a kind of a recap, is we have done area of squares, rectangles, parallelograms, triangles, and trapezoids. Okay, we talked about that parallelograms, triangles, and trapezoids, your base and height need to be perpendicular to each other so you know which numbers to use. Then you guys completed some on the inside, and then we talked about circles, circumference, area, and then we solved some problems with area and circumference, and then we also talked about that when they say to leave in terms of pi, you leave in terms of pi. All right, I hope that this was, it cleared up any kind of confusion maybe from today's quick lesson that we had after our test. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, just put them down at the bottom of this video or just save them for class tomorrow. All right, I hope you guys have a great night.